on this episode of the Mad Rush podcast.
Back to when I was in high school, but I think even what they're dealing with now is on a whole different level. I would say loneliness is at an all-time high. It's not about being around people, but feeling lonely even when you are around people. And I think that has a lot to do with social media. And I talk about that in the book. I have a whole chapter on social media and loneliness. And I kind of wrote this book a little bit closer to COVID. So I definitely talk about some of that as well. And just the post-COVID effects that we're seeing in our teens right now. And honestly, all over the education system. And I think now it's even in college a lot. And I would say the other thing is kind of going off of that social media, just this comparison game that girls are playing with each other is at an all-time high.
Welcome to the Mad Rush podcast. I'm Trisha Addix, the original sorority rush consultant. While the stories I have to share are nothing short of astonishing, this podcast goes beyond the wild client tales and sorority life. I'll be engaging with fascinating guests from both within and outside the Greek world, uncovering the surprising connections that bind us all together. Join me for a journey that's as entertaining as it is enlightening. Welcome to Mad Rush. I am delighted to have today's guest, Smith Minard, join me on Mad Rush. Smith, or as I call her, Smithers, is a teacher, author, and fabulous all-around person. Thank you so much for being here, Smithers.
Thank you so much for having me. I want to call you Mrs. Addix, but I know I should probably switch to Trisha.
Oh my God, no. That's so bad. Yeah, you can't do that.
Ingrained in me.
I know, but yeah, that's not going to work. So I've known Smithers for about 14 years, which is why she wants to call me Mrs. Addix. That is, again, unacceptable. I have watched her blossom into the most inspiring woman that she is today. We met when my older son became friends with her brother, and her mom is in my inner circle of friends and also one of my favorite people. And we're recording this the Thursday before Georgia, Florida weekend, which is a big thing. And I'm getting ready to hang out with your mom all weekend. I'm pumped about that. And a funny story about, so Michael, my son, and her brother, Wid, it's her middle brother. Well, he's the middle child, oldest brother. How do you say that? He's
middle child. Yeah, I don't know.
He's your younger brother, but he's not your youngest brother. Yes. Anyway.
Your younger brother. Or...
The first time I drove he and Michael to Six Flags, and they were in 7th grade, and he called you because he wanted you to do something. And he called you Smithers. And I was like, that is the best name I've ever heard of a brotherly nickname. So I adopted it, and I've been calling her that ever since. And she didn't get a choice in it, just like she doesn't get a choice.
Nickname. She
doesn't get a choice to not call me Mrs. Addix. So we're even on that.
Yeah. I'll switch.
Okay. So we have a lot to talk about today. First, I want to hear she's done some pretty amazing things that I want to hear about, but because it's Mad Rush, obviously, first I want to hear about your college journey at Furman, your sorority experience, and for our listeners going to college at a Furman-sized college, any advice that you might have for them for Rush or just assimilating in general. So tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast. I'm a loyal listener.
Yay. I love a loyal listener. Woo-hoo. I'll send you a t-shirt.
Oh, I would love one. I went to Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina. I had a kind of interesting path to college because I actually took a gap year in between high school and college. So that was honestly kind of some of the reason why I chose not to go to Georgia. But yeah, I graduated high school in 2015. And then I decided to take a gap year and go live in South America for a year, that year in between high school and college, which I could tell lots of stories.
Yeah, I was going to say, talk a little bit more about that. I forgot that you did that. Yeah. Now that you say it, of course, I remember it. But
yeah, so I am a high school Spanish teacher, so that kind of makes a little bit more sense when you hear that. But yeah, I was in all throughout high school. I loved Spanish. I loved my Spanish teachers and just got to have a couple experiences where I got to travel abroad. I went to Nicaragua a few times on mission trips and went on a couple trips with my family. And then I got to go to Spain for a summer or about 3 weeks before my senior year of high school. And I just remember thinking, like, wow, I want to do this for longer. I love it so much. I just really want to become fluent and live in a different country. And I was just once I got my mind on something, my mom can tell you, I had a hard time letting it go. So my senior year of high school, I really did go throughout the college process as normal. I talked to my college advisor about it. I was like, I really want to take a gap year.
Who's your college advisor?
Oh,
Was
the really great one that
Walls?
went to UNC.
Dr. Wall? I mean, Mr. Walls?
No.
Doesn't matter. Anyway, I loved him, and I
don't remember. He was the cross country coach.
Oh, yeah,
Maybe,
yeah.
I don't think that was his name.
He had dark hair. I forget his name. Yeah.
Yeah, he was so great though. And he was super supportive.
I was about to say, that's why I asked. Was he really supportive of you? She went to Marist, which is where my kids went, which is why I know these people. So I'm explaining to the listeners.
Yes. It was pretty unheard of for a Marist grad to not go straight to college. So I definitely think it had people a little bit on edge, like, oh gosh, like this doesn't look good. We want like 100% college after high school. And I was like, I'm going to apply to all these colleges as normal. And it's actually a super easy process. I don't think people realize. I talked to all the colleges I was applying to. And then eventually when I decided on Furman, I was just like, hey, I really want to go to school here. I'm going to go do this experience for a year that's going to make me a stronger student, just a better citizen of the world. I'm going to grow so much, learn all these things. And I just wanted to defer my admission for a year. And they were like, great, we'll see you in the fall of 2016. Like it was truly that simple.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to interject, because when you said it's simple process, what she means is it's not applying to college that's simple, but she's saying that taking the well, and I don't know if that's how it came across, but I want to make sure that, and like everything is more difficult now than it was back in my day. But she's saying that once she got accepted to Furman and decided to defer, that was the simple part.
Yes, that was the simple part. So yeah, I just really wanted to go live abroad for a year, and I went through a program. So I was living with a host family and teaching English and also taking some college courses. And it was such an incredible experience. I lived with a host family in Valparaiso, Chile for about 8 months. And then I was in Peru for 2 months after that. And I had a blog that I would keep up on it. I'm an author now. So a lot of like my love for writing also started then. And I really kept up with my blog. And I feel like a lot of people kind of were like, oh, wow, you're really good at writing. And that was definitely the start of that.
Yeah, I love you. You are. Yeah, I followed your blog when you were there. And that's, and I think, didn't you have in your host family, didn't you have like brothers and sisters in there? Or did they have kids?
Yeah, there was a host sister named Cody. She just now graduated from college, which is so crazy because she was 13 when I was there, which I feel like just makes me feel so old. Maybe
welcome to the club, Smithers.
I know, it's so crazy. And then, my host brother was a year older than me, I think. So he's now almost 30. But yeah, so that was amazing. And then my host sister, which is maybe why you remember this, actually came to Atlanta for 2 months.
Yeah, that's why.
The summer after. So before I was going to college. So yeah, it was just such an incredible experience. Just opened my eyes to so many things. It was not always easy living in South America where nobody spoke English. I mean, I remember calling my family and it was like hard for me to like get back into English because it was just 100% Spanish all the time. But overall, I really loved it. And then I went to Furman my freshman year and I also loved it. So I guess I can talk a little bit more about why I picked Furman.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Over a bigger school.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can probably already tell I'm a sort of unique person. I like to chart my own path a little bit. But at the end of the day, I really was choosing between Furman and Georgia, which are opposite schools in almost every way.
Her parents both went to Georgia. Her dad was a very good tennis player. He played for Georgia. So, and every time I've ever done anything with them, he plays the freaking Georgia fight song, like right in the middle of whatever we're doing. So does he?
That was my childhood as well.
All right. So go ahead. So you're deciding between Furman and Georgia.
Yeah, I applied to like really only schools in the Southeast. And I think looking back, it was probably just because that's what I was familiar with. But I ended up talking to another Marist grad, Mary Helen Kelly, who was a couple years above me at Furman, and she just was kind of telling me about her experience. And I think at the end of the day, I decided I did want a smaller school, and I especially thought coming into college a year behind all my peers from high school, and if I did want to be in a sorority, I know it would have been fine at Georgia, and I think I would have had a really good experience, but I was nervous to rush in the grade below me, and kind of be like a pledge class behind people in my grade at Marist. And that wasn't the only reason, but honestly, that was something I thought about. But overall, I just kind of wanted a fresh start, and I had such an incredible experience. I loved it. So yeah.
So you went to Furman and you rushed, and then you were in
Yeah.
a sorority. And how do you think, if it did? I mean, I don't know, but how do you think that changed your, well, not changed your trick? How did that affect your like life now?
Oh my gosh, in so many ways.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So in at Furman, you rush in January. So that's obviously different than probably most of the clients you're working, or probably all the clients you're working with.
We have a lot of spring rush clients, honestly, but
It's very different than obviously what my friends at state schools were going through, because Furman's a small campus. It's 3,000 kids. You still, even though that sounds so small, it still feels big enough where you don't know everybody, but it is a small community. You are constantly running into people you know. And that's honestly what I loved about it at the end of the day. You always have a mutual friend with every single person you meet in all of your classes. And so, fall semester, my freshman year, I mean, I dove right in. I think taking my gap year was maybe one of the best things for me going into college, because I just felt like I was really confident. I was really comfortable going up to people I didn't know and talking to them. And that was not necessarily what I was like in high school or growing up. So, that was, I think, very evident throughout my freshman year. I got involved in a lot of other things on campus right away my freshman year, which I think helped a lot with the rush process. And as a sorority member, you kind of know the behind the scenes of what fall looks like for freshmen, but you do have a certain amount of girls that you should try to get lunch with a month and dinner with a month. And it's not a formal process because rush has not begun, but you are totally allowed to get to know freshmen and become friends with them. So naturally, I found myself, becoming friends with a lot of older girls, and it really gave me the whole semester to figure out like what groups of girls I gravitated towards or who really took an interest in me. And at the end of the day, I knew before going into Rush. I mean, I didn't exactly know that I wanted to be a KD, but it was definitely that between that and like one other sorority that I was like, okay, I think I'll be really happy in either of these two sororities, which is hard because it limits you. But my Rush experience was honestly amazing. And I know that's not the story for everybody, but it, I just felt very loved and very seen throughout the process. I felt like there was a lot of girls in honestly multiple sororities rooms that just really cared about me and wanted what was best for me. They were really there like, hey, I don't want you to pick this just because I'm in it. I want you to pick what's best for you. And it kind of turns out that my friend group, sort of starting freshman year, we kind of did all end up in the same pledge class. But since we didn't rush until January, I had so many friends outside of KD that I got to maintain because you didn't just jump right into a pledge class, like from my freshman hall and other things I was involved in. But being in KD was amazing. I have such a close group of friends still from college. Many of them were bridesmaids in my wedding.
which she
I
just
just,
got married. Was it April? And it
yep,
was
April.
a spectacular wedding. I was
Yeah.
so honored to be included, and it was really
Yes, it
beautiful.
was so fun. I truly made the best friends.
So you bring up something that is really interesting to me, and I think this might be a little bit different. One, you had the confidence that you might not have had coming straight
Yeah.
from high school, but one thing that I have always said I hate is spring rush because there are multiple
Mm,
opportunities to mess up. And I would not ever
mm.
imagine that you would do that. But sometimes there are things that
Yeah, that's true.
you can do and say that you're not even aware. I mean, nothing as dramatic as like kissing a sorority girl's boyfriend or whatever, things
But
that,
at Furman, stuff like that does happen. It's such a small school. So yeah,
right.
it does happen.
And so then you have these, but it sounds like for your spring rush, you really got to know the people and you got to figure out where you thought you would be a good fit. And clearly you were, since half your pledge class or a lot of your pledge class were, your friend groups. So that's another side to spring rush, one that I don't normally ever subscribe to that, but it sounds like for you, it worked well.
It did. Yeah.
And I looked it up. 38% of Furman students are in Greek life. Did you feel like if you weren't in Greek life, you would have been missing something?
I would have assumed it would be more than 38%. I guess maybe with athletes, that makes sense.
Right.
I thought, it feels like most people are, if I'm being completely honest. It's like you're in Greek life or you're an athlete. And those paths kind of cross a lot. Like since it's a smaller school, so you do kind of know the football team and the basketball team and you kind of know everybody, they're at all the sorority events and everything. Our fraternities are like half the size of our sororities. Like my pledge class was 40 and KA, which was kind of our fraternity that we spent the most time with, was like, I think it was like 20 guys in the pledge class my age. So that ratio is like pretty tough.
Yeah.
But I also think more females than males in general. Like I think it's like 60% female.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say I knew quite a few people who didn't rush, but that was definitely kind of the different choice to make.
That's interesting.
I think the great part about it, and I mean, again, I had a really good experience, so I can't speak to people who had negative experiences, but since it is a small school, and I mean, rush was still a thing, it's definitely nothing like Georgia, but it still is a thing that you have to be prepared for. And, you want the right outfits. And my mom took me shopping and we did all that. We got all the recommendations. We did all that stuff. But it's less of a whole production that you can still be involved in so many other things on campus that, I don't know. I definitely talked to people who didn't rush, who I think still had a great college experience. A lot of them still got invited to stuff with sororities or fraternities and just didn't choose that for them. But it doesn't have to be your whole personality. It would actually be kind of weird if it was your whole personality, I feel like, at Furman.
Yeah, that's a good point. It would be kind of weird if it's your whole personality pretty much anywhere. But
True.
I have another fun fact. My freshman roommate, so if anybody is listening to this podcast, has listened to it more than one time, my story, which is I did not get into a sorority my freshman year. And my roommate from Charlotte, Anna Lindsay, was so great to me and really included me. I ended up pledging Chi Omega, which is where she was in a sorority. But her daughter, Taylor, was a KD at Furman. And so I love that connection.
I know. I never got to know her because it was like during COVID.
Yes.
So she was the new pledge class in January of 2020. And then we went home in March.
Right.
And that was it for me.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I didn't ever go back. Yeah.
That's right.
Which is a whole other crazy story. But so I never got to know her, but she seems great.
She just started med school. So
things that make me feel old.
Exactly. Welcome to my world. You've said that twice now. And I'm like, dude, you wanted to call me Mrs. Addicts.
I know.
Okay. So I feel like if you're listening and you're considering or thinking about where you want to go to school and you're trying to decide if you want to go through rush, I think that's really good advice to get involved in other things in addition to that, or to look into clubs and activities on campus, because one, if you don't have a successful rush, but two, that's just really a way to broaden your circle. And that's really good advice.
Yeah, it is.
It's good advice. Yeah. And it also led you, I think, to write your book. Smith has written a book. I'm going to let her tell you about it, but there's such a synergy with this book and what I do. Like, it's the name of the book, or the book is titled, do you say the name of the book? What is wrong with me? It's entitled Embrace Your Story, A Young Woman's Guide to Discover Who You Are, Where to Go, and Why You Matter. So, like I said, a huge part of what I do in my everyday job is helping to instill confidence in our clients as they begin their college experience. And Smith's book is a tool I recommend for our clients, but I also think it applies to so many people. And so, talk to me about the book. I really think if you're listening, get this book. You can get it on Amazon, and I mean, I'll let her tell you about it. It's like a workbook, and
Mhm.
anyway, talk about what led you to write it and tell people about it.
I have it right here. So yeah, like Trisha said, it's embrace your story. And I would say this book came out of a couple things. I think the first thing it came out of was I've always loved to write. So I knew I wanted to just write a book, but I really didn't know what I wanted to write a book on. And I got involved with a few different organizations, and I ended up working with the self-publishing school who give you a coach and a mentor to help you write a book. And I was kind of telling him what I was passionate about. I have always loved working with younger girls. And all throughout college, obviously in my sorority, I was the chaplain my senior year, which meant that I got to like host Bible studies even for the younger girls. So anybody in the sorority could come. And that was my junior, senior year. So I always loved pouring into girls that were younger than me. And now I'm a high school teacher. So I spend all my days with high schoolers. And it is a lot of fun, but it's also kind of breaks your heart every single day just seeing what they go through and just, yeah, just life. Like I think you said this.
Like what?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think back to when I was in high school, but I think even what they're dealing with now is on a whole different level. I would say loneliness is at an all-time high. It's not about being around people, but feeling lonely even when you are around people. And I think that has a lot to do with social media. And I talk about that in the book. I have a whole chapter on social media and loneliness. And I kind of wrote this book a little bit closer to COVID. So I definitely talk about some of that as well, and just the post-COVID effects that we're seeing in our teens right now. And honestly, all over the education system. And I think now it's even in college a lot. And I would say the other thing is kind of going off of that social media, just this comparison game that girls are playing with each other is at an all-time high. I did get Instagram when I was in 8th grade. So kind of young when you think back on it, but Instagram was not what it is now. It was kind of an app just to edit your photos on and post like 6 things a day, like silly things with friends. And now it's like a highlight reel of your life, and is so much easier to feel like your life is not as good as somebody else's when you're seeing a highlight reel of their life on it. So I think working with those girls every single day, and then I also lead Young Life here in Washington.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
I
awesome.
think, yeah, yeah. So that gives me kind of a different perspective, not as their teacher, but just as kind of a mentor. So I was kind of doing all these things, and I was seeing all these problems, I guess, and I really wanted to write a book. And it kind of came down to the point of, okay, well, I'm not a well-known author. I can't just publish a memoir. So I need to write a book that's going to serve an audience. And I picked the audience of people that I feel like I know the most about. That's maybe a unique perspective that other people don't know. So yeah, I wrote it really for college age girls, because I talk a lot about post-grad and kind of what that life might look like after you graduate college and you're discovering so many new things about yourself. You're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life, where you want to be, where you want to go. It is a really hard time in life that a lot of people don't talk about. And so I kind of split it up into 10 different chapters, different sort of tools that I have found in my life that have helped me embrace my story, whether it's been super messy parts of my life, really great parts of my life. And yeah, like you said, I have journal prompts at the end of each chapter that I think a lot of people have really loved working through. So yeah, I loved the whole process, and it's so fun to hear what people say about it.
It really is. It's a great tool. And I want to go back to this has nothing to do with the content of the book, but you said you
Yeah.
did a self-publishing school. What is that?
Yeah. So I was trying to decide, since I wanted to write a book, but the publishing industry is really crazy. I still don't know a
Yes,
lot
I
about
know.
it. I mean, you're kind of in the middle of it. And I would like to go the traditional publishing route eventually, but I just decided to go the self-publishing route for a few different reasons. I don't really have a following. I mean, I have a very, small following on social media. And a lot of traditional publishers do need to see that you have kind of an audience already. And then especially with my first book, I thought it would be great to kind of have more control over my content. But I knew that I needed guidance of how to do this because it's very confusing. So the Self-Publishing School is a pretty well-known organization, and they pretty much help authors. They help a lot of business owners kind of publish a book who don't necessarily want to be authors, but kind of want a book as a tool to grow their business. And they assign you a coach, and they help you through the whole process. They, you meet with them monthly to go through the writing process, but then they help you a lot with the actual publishing. Like, they helped me design my cover. I had ultimate say on it, but they had people helping me with that. And then they get it all on Amazon. And now I have full reins over the book to put it in different bookstores and do what I want with it. But it was just kind of like a stepping stone point person to help you through the process.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So how long did it take you to write it? You said you met with him or them monthly or whomever.
I would say I started writing it before I officially signed on with the self-publishing school. But once I had probably chapters, but a lot of things had to be changed once I signed on because they really helped me define like my vision and my goal and my audience for the book. So I would say I probably signed on it was probably about a year total-ish. Less than that of writing. I mean, probably only like 6 months of writing. And then it just took forever to do everything else after that.
Yeah.
But it was about a year. Yeah.
Welcome to my world. Yeah. So,
yes.
And you also, this was a coach, and say this all the time, prepare. But with anything, having someone in your corner coaching you, and I'm really not trying to sell my service right now, but what I'm saying is the resources are out there. So to reinvent that wheel by yourself without help, it's kind of doesn't make sense. Like if you have the resources, meaning someone who knows what, knows a way to help you figure out what your goals are and how to hold the book. I think that's great. That's amazing. Yeah. And it's just like everything that I talk about. It's why I think you should get a college counselor if you don't have one at your school or, whatever. I feel like having that resource was great. So I have read this book several times. I have given it to clients, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot. I didn't tell you I was going to do this, and because I just decided. Do you have like, it can be 3, it can be 1 or 5 or all 10, whatever. Do you have like things that like key points that you think are important when you're trying to help people embrace their story? Do you have like some that you can share?
I would say the first thing that I tell girls is find your people. So you talk about this a lot in a really beautiful way, but don't find friends. Yeah. Don't find friends of people that you necessarily think would make you seem cooler or, or just aren't really good friends for you. Truly find people who are a good friend to you and be a good friend to other people. That's what I also tell girls a lot is you're not going to find good friends if you're not being a good friend yourself. So I think having a good community and having a good group of people and friends around you and older people in your life, there's a lot of statistics coming out about how important having adults in your life that care about you and support you that aren't your parents and just, yeah, exactly. Having adults in your life that aren't your parents that love you and encourage you and support you, how just important that is for teenagers. So find those people, but also find just really, really good friends. I know easier said than done, but I have a whole chapter on that in my book about friendship. So that would
And I'm going to interject one thing about the adults. I'd love to hear that. So there is someone who went through Rush this fall and did not have a successful Rush, and her Bible study leaders reached out to me on her behalf and just said, she's great. We want to support her. How can you help her? And I thought that was so cool because it wasn't her parents. Yeah. And I mean, I've since talked to her mom, but it's a very cool thing. I love that you say that, because these women were really like she did not understand the system. She did not know what she was doing. And we think that you can help her. And so they reached out. So I thought that was cool. Okay. So sorry, I interrupted you. So find your people, posted about a whole song. That song, what's the singer's name? Anyway, there's a song, Find Your People, that I love. Holcomb. Yeah. Someone sent that to me, a DM on Instagram, and said, this made me think of you. And it was one of my favorite DMs I've ever gotten. And just a few weeks ago. Yeah. They said, this reminds me of you. Okay. So find your people.
Song. Yeah, I would say find your people. I would say find a way to fall in love with who you are right now, because I think we can be too sort of idealize the person that we want to be in the future, and it can feel so far away. And I think once I learned just to, I know it sounds cliche, like love yourself, but it is important to just truly like love who you are right now and find like gratitude with what you have in your life and what your gifts are. And I think tapping into what your personal gifts are and how those are unique from other people's gifts can just help free us from all that comparison that I was talking about. And I also have a chapter kind of on that. And then I would say there's a few other things. I think when I talk to girls about a lot of their questions, and guys, but I sort of focus on girls, talking about what they want to do with their life, it feels like this daunting question. And as you know, things have even changed since I was in high school. And now I have like 6th graders at my school who are, their parents are like, what are we going to do to get them into, you know, these top colleges? And that's really hard, I think, for kids to carry when they're 11, but it's also hard for kids when they're 18 to carry that. So I always tell people, like, take the next best step for you. And I think that's a good frame of mind for me, I think, because a lot of times I can still get stuck in like, well, what is my life going to look like 15 years from now? But when you know every single day you're taking another step towards the person you want to be, and it's not necessarily even who, like the thing you want to be or like the job you want to have, but it's, if you're taking steps towards the person you want to be, I think all the other things will kind of fall into place. So that's maybe 3 things just off the top of my head, but
yeah. And those are, I mean, you're so wise, and I mean, y'all buy the book.
Thank you.
And no, seriously, it's what I say, but it's just from a different, I mean, she has more things to say than I do, but what I mean is it's from a different perspective. It's someone who is, you know, living and seeing this every day. And it's really amazing. So you said you might want to do another book another time. So are you working on one?
I'm not working on one. I am sort of beginning stages working on a whole, I mean, this book has journal prompts, like I said, but I want to make like an actual journal that goes along with it. So that's sort of in the works, which is exciting.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, like a guided journal to go with it. Journaling's always been a huge part of my life. I have literally so many journals from since I was in 2nd grade. I have written down
really
everything
from that age.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's really funny to read, but they're all still in Atlanta in my childhood bedroom, and just like
I'm going through them.
Yeah, it's honestly, I would like to, like, I don't know what I want to do with them, but I want to do something with them because I feel like it's very unique. But journaling has just been such a unique way for me to reflect just on how I'm feeling. I feel like I maybe don't come off this way, but I am a very, very emotional person, and I have a lot of emotions that I feel like, I mean, I think a lot of women do, but seem to be on a whole other level. So I think, but I think I learned really early on, like how to kind of process them myself in a lot of ways. And journaling has always been a huge part of that for me. So I think a guided journal would be fun. And then, yeah, I would love to also write another book. I've thought a lot about that. And I feel like I need to wait for like the right idea. I have like a lot of ideas right now, but like I just said, taking the next best step. I also have a full-time job and just got married. So it's like,
Smithers, why don't you have another book written? Yeah,
exactly. No.
Well, you've always been an old soul. So I bet those 2nd grade journals are not just like typical 2nd grade musings.
Definitely not. It's kind of like alarming sometimes reading them, but but it's, yeah, I think it's really cool. And I was thinking about this morning, like telling you, it's really cool seeing you starting this new passion and this business and writing a book and doing all these things. Because it gives me, I think, a lot of hope that like my life isn't over at 27. Like I have so many more, like I have so many more years to still cultivate what I'm passionate about and find different ways to use my passions and start new ventures and things. And I think it is really inspiring. So I think it's amazing that you're doing all this.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you. And it's very daunting to do something like this at my age, but it's also something that I really feel called to do. And so that's why I'm doing it at this age.
Exactly.
Wow. But
yeah, you have to have that calling or you're not going to.
Yeah. I think it was TJ Calloway, the guy who started Onward Reserve, who was on my podcast. And he said, or on this podcast, he said, if you're not passionate about this, then it's just not going to work because the amount of work and, just like anything. And I'm very privileged to be able to do this. So I'm not saying that. I mean, I know that it's maybe some people have to have a job that is not inspiring because they have to have that job. And I'm very, very fortunate and lucky to do this and take this risk. But it's also, if I weren't passionate about it, I don't think it would work. And so I think that you have so many passions. And I want to say when I was in second grade, I also have always loved to write. I did not journal. I don't have the patience for that. But I would read the Little House on the Prairie books and just rewrite them, like using different names. Like plagiarism was my jam when I was that age. Yeah. My hobby was plagiarism. I was like, okay, like, I don't know. I would change the name and maybe the street they lived on. And I'm like, look, I read a book. No, you didn't. You just plagiarized a book.
That's so sweet.
But yeah, so you are so speaking of inspiring, you're so inspiring. That's why I wanted you to be on this podcast. It was, the fact that you were in a sorority was kind of an aside, but I really, because I think that your book and your message and your unique way of telling it is just so inspiring and so amazing. So at the end of this podcast, we'll let people know how they can find you and get the actual title of the book. It will also be in the show notes. But before we close, you know what I got to do. So Bama Rush Talk popularized the hashtag OOTD outfit of the day. For Mad Rush, I'm repurposing hashtag OOTD into observation of the day. So what is Smithers' hashtag observation of the day? It can be anything.
Yeah, I'm going to very off brand with not do something very deep. But it's Halloween on the day we're recording. So my observation of the day, I am not a huge Halloween person, but
I've never liked it.
Yeah. Not really about the scary stuff, but I have noticed that especially my 7th graders, they have really taken the opportunity to just dress up in something that's very like fun and honestly like nostalgic in a lot of ways. I saw a lot of marks, like things from the 90s, like throwbacks. So my observation is that I like this version of Halloween where you can just like have fun and dress up as different things and not the scary dark side of Halloween. So I'm okay with this side of Halloween. But yeah.
That's awesome. That's cool. Yeah. I have one of my very closest friends and one of your mother's very closest friends is a grandmother, and I am obsessed with all 3 of her grandchildren. But the oldest one, last year, so I think she was 3. I get confused, but she was 3 last year, and I came over before Halloween. I brought a Halloween book. Like she was not having it. She was like, no, I do not want to read your Halloween book. Put it away. I was like, okay. So I should have known because I think she's so awesome, and I freaking hate Halloween too. So I mean,
yeah.
I woke up and I was like,
I forgot it was Halloween, honestly.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. And then I remembered that my son and daughter-in-law, their dog is going in a Halloween parade.
Cute.
So I'm excited to see that.
Yes.
Those pictures, but that's really all I want to see. And I want to see the grandkids.
You have Georgia, Florida weekend. So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you'll see any of the college kids and all their get-ups, but.
I'm actually driving. I'm driving 21 of them to Frat Beach tomorrow.
Okay.
If you're listening.
Yeah, you will definitely see
Yeah. So Frat Beach, you guys can Google it if you don't know what it is. Frat Beach is not just frats and sororities, but it is where these college kids take over the beach on St. Simon's Island here at the beach. And it is an insane day. And I met someone, I think it was just last night, who is going to be, she's a mom. So moms set up tent, they hand out sandwiches and water. And it's a really cool day, but the costumes are amazing. And last year, I think I even posted, I drove the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in my
love it.
truck. Yeah. Or it wasn't my truck. It was somebody else's. But anyway. Yeah. So tell me where listeners can find you. Again, say the title of your book again.
Yeah.
And it's on Amazon, but again, it'll be in the show notes. So if you're just listening, driving around the car, thank you for one, for listening, but two, you don't have to wreck to write it down.
Yes.
But
yeah, so the book is Embrace Your Story, A Young Woman's Guide to Discover Who You Are, Where to Go, and Why You Matter. And you can buy it on Amazon. If you search Embrace Your Story or Smith Minard, it will pop up. And then on Instagram, I'm Smith_Minard. I mean, I'm not an avid Instagram user. I need to up my game a little bit, but I do have links to all my stuff in there. I have a newsletter that I'm very bad about sending out that I sometimes send out, so you can join that. And yeah, I have a website too, but it kind of links to all the same stuff. So.
Gotcha. Cool. Awesome. Well, you've been amazing. I knew I was going to have a great time talking to you, but not surprised at all I did. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your inspiring self with us today. And I will get you to say go dogs instead of go Dens, because, I guess Furman's probably playing this weekend too. So. And now what team did Brian likes? Washington?
UW, yeah.
Yeah, UW.
He went to the University of Washington. So we also say go dogs, DAWGS. So it was not a hard transition for me. So that's
there you go.
Yeah, they're playing USC this weekend at home, so we are going to that.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Love you. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Welcome to Time Out with Trisha. Because can you really give advice if you don't speak about yourself in the third person? I don't think so. This is exactly how I speak to my clients. The good, the bad, and the ugly. So listen to me. I know what I'm talking about. Now let's get into it. We have clients who went to high schools that are smaller than some of the larger sororities at these schools. The number of people in Greek life at some of these larger colleges is staggering, and it's growing each year. I say this all the time. Because sororities are so big, once you get into a house, it's important to be involved. Sign up for committees. As my friend and the comedian Ellen Scrimetti said in her hilarious skit, how do we let them know she can do bubble letters? You will obviously meet more people and get to know them. And just like a sorority can make a college campus smaller, small groups inside a sorority can make the numbers less overwhelming. Get involved, and you can only be rewarded for that. And that's it for Time Out with Trisha. We'll see you on another episode of the Mad Rush Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Mad Rush Podcast. If you are enjoying this podcast, please consider leaving us a 5-star review. For additional Rush tips, updates, and more, please follow me on Instagram at Rush with Confidence. If you would like to reach out to us, or for more information, please email info@madrushpod.com. This podcast is produced by Collier Landry and Don't Touch My Radio. Copyright Trisha Adams.